we are ready to start. Can I ask that we open this meeting with a moment of silence for quiet prayer and reflection and meditation? Thank you very much. I know that we are all au fait with hybrid meetings and virtual meetings, but can I ask that all members to be muted at the beginning of the meeting to avoid background noises? If you have points of order, could you use it in the chat function of Teams? All video and audio must be switched off to improve the quality of connection. However, if an official is speaking, they may put their mic and video on. And then please switch off your mic once you've finished talking. Good afternoon once again, members and anybody, officials and anybody who's a member of the public, welcome, and look forward to a fruitful meeting. Can I ask the members to introduce themselves, starting with Member Bartman, please?
Afternoon, Deirdre Bartman, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chair. Member Kaiser Philander, member of the committee.
Good afternoon. I don't see any other members of the committee, so we will move on. We will now have a briefing by Statistics South Africa on the status of the Western Cape Province. Mr. Ashwell Jenica, I know that you're in the meeting. Do you mind introducing yourself and your team, please?
Thank you. I'm Ashwell Jenica. I'm responsible for statistical operations at Stats SA, and the team that I've got with me is DDG Ntabiseng Makhata. She is the DDG responsible for methodology and standards in Stats SA, and also responsible for the post-enumeration survey. In my presentation, I'll talk about the post-enumeration survey. Then you've got Kelvin Molongwane. He is the person responsible for the census. And then we've got the head of content of the census, DDG Nozipo Shabalala. And then also the person responsible for operations in the census, that is Lukman Umar. Lukman, did I get everyone?
Yes, Ashwell.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jenica. Would you mind going ahead with your presentation? Thank you.
Thanks. I'll start. You can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for allowing us to present today. We'll give you an update on where we are with the census at the moment and what is the next processes that will follow in the census. Okay, so as you know, our goal with the census is to count everyone within the borders of South Africa. The idea is not to omit everyone and also not to duplicate. So you would ideally not want to go to households and count them, whereas they themselves count themselves online. So that's the goal of the census. So why do we have the census? I mean, every year we do surveys, and the big difference between what the census gives us and what surveys gives us is that the census gives you data at the lowest geographic area in South Africa. So that allows us to make interventions at a very small geographic level, whereas our surveys that we do annually, we do 30,000 households on average, and that gives you data at provincial level. So that's the power that the census brings every 10 years. This time around, it cost us about 3.2 billion rand to do the census. And so, of course, you can't do that every year at that sort of cost, and therefore it's every 10 years, also legislated to be like that. Okay, what's our overall progress? Because we are more concerned about the Western Cape, so where did we end up with the census? So we touched about 97% of all the enumerator areas. So the enumerator areas is those small areas consisting of about 100 to 200 households. And so we went to about 97% of them. And of this, we've got 82% of completed questionnaires. So those are either completed 74% in the field, 8% online, and then we've got in progress 15%. So 15% in progress means we could potentially get some more data out of that 15%, depending on what the completion rate was by the time we stopped. Okay, so what's the next process? So we've done the main census. We stopped around the 30th of May. That was in the Western Cape. Other provinces we stopped before then. And then in June, we went into the field with a post-enumeration survey. I'll tell you a little bit more about the post-enumeration survey later. But currently we're in the field with a post-enumeration survey, and we're ending, we've extended it, and we're ending this Sunday, the 28th of August. And then after that, we'll do our data confrontation and report writing. And by the second quarter, if you take the calendar year, so that's April, May, June next year, we plan to launch the results. And I'll also tell you a little bit more about that. Just to give you a sense of what is the processes we're currently busy with. So we're currently busy with data editing, and that's now to check what's happening. So I spoke about the 15% in the Western Cape, for example, that is in progress or partially completed. So you go through each and every one of those data questionnaires and you see what is available in the questionnaires, what can you use, what data makes sense and what data doesn't make sense, and then you adjust it appropriately. Then we do data coding. So there's open-ended questions. For example, we asked a question like occupation. So people would say, I'm a teacher. Other people would say, I'm an educator. And other people might use other terms. So you look at all those and you then code that so that you can ultimately have a list of data items called teachers. Then we do some confrontation. We don't do this alone. So confrontation doesn't mean we fight with the data. Confrontation look at what data is in there, how does it compare to other data sets that's available. And we do this with international experts. So we've got people helping us, and ultimately these experts and consultants that's assisting us will present these results to the Statistics Council. The Statistics Council also appoints their independent assessors that also looks at the data and to see that they make an independent advice to the Minister and the Statistician General whether he could or could not release the results, or whether there's anything that the population should take into account of when it comes to the results. For example, in the past, we struggled to count people 0 to 4 years old. So Stats Council would put in their council statements that when you use the data of the ages 0 to 4, take into account that there might be some concerns around that. Then after that, we do weighting and estimation, and that's the PES, so the PES that's in the field at the moment. We use those results to either adjust where you've overcounted or to adjust then where you've undercounted. For example, in the Western Cape, when we've counted 82% of the population, should the PES find we've missed people, the data will then be adjusted so that it doesn't mean we only stop at 82%. At the end of the day, you get the full 100% of who should be in your population. So let's talk about the PES, because a rather important survey. We go to about 1% of all the EAs in the country. And so this is a survey that's done according to UN guidelines. And what you do is you go to about 1% of all the enumerator areas in the country, and then you go and count and you see who do we count in the PES. And once you've finished counting in the PES, you use the data of the census and you compare. So you've got a PES questionnaire and you've got a census questionnaire. And then you see who did you count in the census that you didn't count in the PES, who did you count in the PES not counted in the census, and who have you missed. And then you adjust the data accordingly. Just to talk about the PES processes. So of course, there's planning and the methodology that goes into that. But currently we're in the field and we are stopping on the 28th of August. We've now done about 95% on average throughout the country. And after this, once you have completed on Friday, then for the month of September to November, we do matching and reconciliation visits. So when you see, for example, there is a questionnaire in the PS in the census, which doesn't make sense to you, then you would go to the field again and make sure that you match those up. And then, of course, the analysis and the report writing, which will give you the weights, and those weights will then use to adjust the final population count. So that is the PS. Let's talk about dissemination. I mean, all of this we do because we would ultimately want to disseminate the results. And our target is to start sort of April, May, June next year. We want to start releasing these results. And so the existing formats that we've got, for example, some of you might have got Supercross, some Australian software package that we use to disseminate the results. We'll still use that to disseminate the results in. And so we'll be going around to municipalities and provincial government departments and everyone else to install the software. The software is free of charge, and we'll train people on how to use the software. So we will be contacting people who's organizing municipalities within the province and make sure that we go to the appropriate events to make sure that training happens. Then we'll have campaigns like Did You Know campaigns, and this is essentially targeted at the man in the street. For example, currently there's 60.6 million people in South Africa. So that's the mid-year estimates that was released a month ago, said there's 60.6 million people in South Africa. So you'll have campaigns like that. You'll go around and you'll put on posters and you'll have campaigns on social media that informs the nation about how many people there are in South Africa and other interesting and important facts from the census that will be part of the Did You Know campaigns. So this dissemination I mean, this time around, we'll use some smart dissemination tools that gives us more visualization than what we've had in the past to make sure that we optimize. I mean, think about it, 3.2 billion rand we've spent collecting this data. So we must make sure that when the data is available next year, we'll maximize in terms of distributing this, making sure that the data is available on people's smartphones, on iPads, on the website, and everywhere where people go, they should see the census results, and they must know the important things that there is to know to take part in all democratic activities in the country. Well, that's all from my side in terms of where we are in the census. Chairperson, let me hand back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenica, for that presentation. I would also like to welcome members Brinkhuis and Marie to the meeting. Welcome to you, sirs. I want to ask Mr. Jenica, is there anything else from your team before I open for questions? Are there any other comments from your team that they would like to make at this present time?
Let me just see if there's any of them.
No one's put their hand up yet, but I just want to open to them first before we ask questions. Yes, I see a hand.
Calvin, who is responsible for the census.
Yes, Calvin.
Go for it.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I guess mine is really, in addition, just to reiterate the support that the Western Cape Provincial Government provided to us as we were undertaking the project. I guess if it wasn't for those concerted efforts that were then initiated, possibly would be talking a different coverage rate as Mr. Jenica has reported. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bolongwana. Right, members, Do you have any questions to the presentation? Are there any members with any questions to the presentation?
Yes, I got a question.
Go ahead, Member Marie.
Thank you. Mr. Jenica, you mentioned something about the PS. You say that you will check if whatever data you receive makes sense. Can you explain what makes sense? Against what do you compare it so that it either makes sense or don't make sense? And then I would like to know when you do people register online and where they go in person and you got your canvases, which of the two would you consider to be more correct or more credible information? Does the one have an advantage over the other, or do you consider it to be of equal accuracy and value?
Thank you, Member Marie. Mr. Jenica, would you like to have all the questions posted to you, or would you like to answer them one for one?
Christopher, let's have all the questions and then the Stats SA panel will answer.
Thanks. Member Philander, you may go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, just in terms of a very huge exercise and also a very costly exercise, in terms of the information gathered, how does that information correlates or disseminates within the IEC database, and does it somehow, how can I say, gets you know, does the database get influenced by this information? If so, how does it come about? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Philander. I have anybody else who would like any questions from the members? In that case, I have 3 questions of my own. The first question, you talk about smart dissemination tools. What type of tools are we talking here? What exactly are we talking about here? And if those tools, if the apps for phones and tablets, are they part of the current budget? And then my question, my final question is, in the Western Cape, we saw a concerted marketing campaign from the Western Cape government and from the city of Cape Town to get people to register, to get people to get counted. When the city of Cape Town and the Western Cape government saw that the numbers of people taking part in the census were not adequate, and it could have had severe ramifications on equitable share. Why did Statistics SA not also take a lead role in collection or advocation of collection of the data and getting people to get counted? Thank you. Mr. Jenica, to you.
Thank you. Maybe let me have a first round, and Tabi, Lukman, and Nozipo, you'll add. Mr. Murray, the PS, so how do you compare the PS? So in a country, you've got a certain sense of what the demographic profile in the country is. So our demographic profile has got a bit of, it's small on the top, and then you've got a bulge in the middle, and then it goes in a little bit for the children. So you've got a very good sense of what should be where, and over time, you've got a sense of what the growth is. So you've got a number of censuses that you use to say, okay, roundabout we should be here. And of course, when you're not there, you need to confront the data and say, why is that? Is that because there was an error in your counting, or is there something else that you didn't take into account? For example, normally you would count people within 1 month. Now in this time, we went over a month, then you now need to think about what sort of statistical error does that produce, and does that correspond to what you think and where you think the population should be. So what works best, online or in person? There is pros and cons attached to both of them. So, for example, in our rural areas, we find that in person works exceptionally well. People are very open, they open their doors, they are happy to receive us. And when you say you're from government, they understand, they want to be counted. In urban areas, you don't get that welcome. There is words that people used in Clutersville to talk to us that you can't say in any in this sort of a meeting. So people are not very happy to receive us online, especially in urban areas. So it depends on where you are, and then you find that your online capability in rural areas is not that strong, and your literacy is not to the extent where people can complete the questionnaire that should be completed. So it's not that the one is better than the other one. It's more a matter of fit for purpose. So in some areas, certain things works. In other areas, you would find it doesn't work. So how do we relate, or how do we work together with the IEC? So the IEC, we've got what's called enumerator areas, and the IEC has got what's called voting districts. So they use our enumerator areas and the population within those enumerator areas to determine their voting districts. And also taking into account that the population that you're talking about, so the IEC would then stratify everyone over 18, and they would then use our data, even the mid-year estimates. Every year we do what's called mid-year estimates, MIPE. So even in the absence of a census, the IEC will use our mid-year population estimates, and they will use that to determine where the voting districts would be and where they would put their centers where they would allow people to come and vote. So a very close collaboration between us and the IEC, and there's always sharing of ideas and sharing of data to make sure that that happens. What sort of data are we talking about? So we're investigating a number of things. For example, we're looking at Microsoft tools that's in Microsoft, and there's something called Plato that we're also investigating, but mainly we're looking at what's Australia doing, what's New Zealand doing, what's the UK doing at the moment in terms of disseminating. What is the tools that is going to be more, I mean, people are looking, for example, now more at dashboards than anything else. So whereas previously 10 years when we disseminated, Supercross was good for people to use and cross-tabulation, and still, I mean, we've got Nesta as a package that's used by the academics, and we'll continue using something like Nesta for the academics, and Supercross will be for other people. But there's other ones who might not be interested in that, but who's more looking at dashboards. And so we're investigating that, and we're benchmarking that across the globe to see what other people are doing. In terms of publicity, I mean, why didn't we take the lead role in terms of publicity? Lukman, you must help me. We have 200 million rand to spend on publicity.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So we spend about 200 million rand on publicity. Now, it turns out that that just wasn't enough, you know, and the way people consume, for example, the way people consume TV nowadays is not the way it used to be. I mean, people are watching Netflix and all those sorts of things. So we took a leading role, and we had 200 million rand to spend. But given the current situation in South Africa, we probably needed 600 million rand to do the type of publicity to convince people just after COVID that it's in their best interest to do. But if we would have gone to Treasury and asked them for 600 million, they would have laughed at us for that. But given our experience now, I mean, the way the Western Cape was running the publicity campaign is much more effective. So in future, we will, and our partnership turned out to be very well, because we could say these are the areas where there's problems. There's problems, for example, with the farmers. So you could have had mayors and municipal managers going directly to speak to the farmer community there. And some people just listen much better to the locals than, for example, Stats SA coming and having certain messages. So we did take a lead, but we just didn't have enough money to make the impact that was needed to do a census just after COVID. Thank Calvin and Tabby, is there anything that should be added? Is Calvin and Tabby nosy? Chairperson, doesn't seem like there's anything to be added.
Thank you very much. Before I do my follow-up, Member Marie, you have a follow-up question?
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, Mr. Jenica, for your response. But your response also opened up more questions. What I taken from that is there is a guesstimate, and there is an estimate, and then you have the actual. Now, when it comes to the guesstimate part, how did you determine how many people live in informal settlements, which has mushroomed so much in the Western Cape? I don't know whether they are citizens or illegal immigrants. We don't know that. We only counted this time heads. How did you do when you get to the guesstimate? Did you make use of aerial photographs? Or how did you, because I'm sure people will be scared to go in there. And when you take an estimate, is it estimate of trends over a specific time period that leads you to think this can't be, or this is undercounted or overcounted? And will you then, taking these two into account, adjust your actual? Because if you got figures and you find that the figures are supposed to be
So remember, Marie, you've put yourself on mute.
I put myself, I don't know where I stop now. Okay. You see, we in the Western Cape have so many informal settlements that are mushrooming. Many of them are illegal structures. We got no idea who stays in, how many people in a shack. But we have to give service to those people, service delivery. They expect to be hospital, to go to hospitals, schools, etc., and providing housing for them. So it's important to us to have a guesstimate, but also an accurate estimate. And that's actually my question, because the Constitution talks of people's rights. It doesn't talk of citizenship rights. So these people that they say have a right of access to this, right of access to that, is not defined as legal citizens, it's just people. So it's important for us to know how many people are also in the Western Cape that shouldn't be here or don't have a legal right to be here. How did you count those?
Thank you, Member Marie. Ms. Ishmael, I see your hand up. Would you like to add now or after the answer to the question?
Good afternoon. It's fine. I'll come in after the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Zinat. I have a follow-up question as well, Mr. Jenica. My question is regarding the budget for communication and for 200 million. While I might agree that Treasury would not take kindly to 20% of your budget being for communication, I'm concerned that the dissemination of information and the consumption thereof will not be as effective as what it can be. can I ask, what is your dissemination campaign? What part of that budget have you set aside for advertising or communication regarding the dissemination of the information? And how will this be done in the next in quarter 2 of 2023? Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Jenica.
Thanks. Lukman, can you speak to the budget one? And let me give a shot at Mr. Murray's question. Okay, so there's two parts to doing a census. Okay, let me just firstly say whether people are there legally or illegally, we don't know that and we do not ask that. So we count everyone within the borders of South Africa. And even when we release the results, it will give no indication as to what the status of people are. We will just say this is how many people we counted. So there's two ways. Firstly, when you do the planning of the census, then what you do is you use our existing EA layer, enumerator area layer, to determine how many enumerator areas were there the last time you counted. Then you look at the most recent aerial photography and whatever other mapping tools and mapping information you've got available to determine what the new EAs should look like. And then you determine, and this is where your estimates that you talk about, this is where that comes in. So then you estimate, this is how many enumerators we need, and this is how many enumerator areas there are. But then after that, you don't estimate anymore. Then you physically go and you actually count each and every dwelling unit. And that then gives you what we call the last answer. And when I talk about estimation after that, it's when you have done your adjustment based on how many people you've missed. And then you estimate what the final answer should be. Let me just ask Ntabi to add to this if I've missed anything around estimates and actual information.
Thank you. Tabi Singh Makata, is there anything else that you'd like to add there, ma'am?
No, I want to believe Mr. Jenica has covered me well there. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Ntabi. Lukman, just a budget.
Thank you. Okay, so the dissemination budget has been compartmentalized. It's completely different to the actual budget campaign or the publicity campaign for the census. That was spent on various mediums and above and below the line advertising and publicity. The dissemination budget is primarily built off building the software tools, the equipment, getting actually the final census results and deliverables out there. Treasury has allocated a budget in the current medium term of approximately 30 million rand, and the bulk of that is about 25 odd million of that is particularly on the actual software and tools and dissemination tools that the software is actually delivering the census dissemination. So, but there's no big campaign planned as part of dissemination at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ishmael, would you mind introducing yourself and asking your question, please?
Good afternoon, Zinat Ishmael, and I'm the head of the Provincial Data Office in the Western Cape Government. And thank you, Ashwell Jenica, for the insightful presentation. So, Chair, I just have one question. But firstly, before I ask the question, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Molongwana for the acknowledgement of the collaboration with the Western Cape Government and Stats SA, and that is the role of the Western Cape Government Stats SA, especially on such an important country data initiative. So the question to Mr. Jenica is, would it be feasible to document the lessons learned, and if so, when will it be available? And when Stats SA, if you will document the lessons learned, will that be done in collaboration with other government departments or stakeholders that have played a collaborating role in the census? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ishmael, and thank you for turning your video on so I know who I'm talking to. Member Marie, one more follow-up, sir.
That you afford me another bite at the cherry. Mr. Jenica and other officials here, we have just received your report, which says that we actually, in terms of the 100 persons per member of provincial parliament, the Western Cape should not have 42 MPs, but 71. And that would be probably what will be going on, and change our constitution accordingly to make provision for it, because we have a constitution in the Western Cape that says 42 members. We got to change that constitution, but you do not change constitutions every year or even every 2 or 4 years. So if we must take a guesstimate or estimate of future population growth for the next 5 years, would you say that 71 would be too conservative, taking 100,000 people per member of parliament? Or do you think that we should actually, that 71 should be adjusted up to at least 74 before the next census will show again we are underrepresented or underfinanced? It's very important for me to have an answer to this, because sooner legislation will vote on the issue of how the constitution of the Western Cape will be amended. Do you think 71, judging by your estimates, guesstimates, and actual figures, can prepare themselves for further influx, which will again make our parliament underrepresented? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Marie. Mr. Jenica, if you would wrap up, please.
Thank you. Calvin, can you give a shot at the at Zenith's question on the lessons learned and when that will be available? We've had our national debriefing. How is that going? And then I'll give a shot at Mr. Murray's question.
Thank you, afternoon. I guess in this regard, Ms. Ishmael, indeed, the process that we normally undertake is to have what we call a debriefing after the completion of the census. At this stage, we have only managed to do a debrief looking at the field-related operations as well as governance issues. We are still to then have a comprehensive debriefing where we now look at post-enumeration activities, of course, taking into account the experts' report that will be talking to the various variables that they are contracted to engage on. But in the main, would normally sum it up by giving what we would call how the count was done. But in relation to the actual details that we then capture in this debriefing reports, those are in the main reserved for internal use by Stats SA in preparation of the next census, and of course in the interim, how it then informs the improvements as we then do our annual surveys. But I guess if there are specific interests that maybe any other sister department has in this regard, we could look as to how best we can share such information, but of course still keeping the necessary confidential areas in that context. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, sir.
Calvin. Thanks, Zenit, for that question. Thanks, Mr. Murray, for your question, because it gives me the opportunity to talk about trust and trust in statistics. Now, it is critically important that when we collect statistics, that people see us as independent and knows we are independent. And if that is the case, then they've got trust in us. So your question is sort of leading towards the issue of becoming a referee and a player. Now, when it comes to Stats SA, we provide the data that will allow you to use it. So we don't then have appetite as to whether 71 or 74 is enough. And it's rather to the interest of the statistical system that we do not get involved in saying this is enough or that's enough or this will be better or the other one won't be better. So to make sure that there's trust in the whole system, we maintain our independence and we do not get involved in advising as to how our data should or should not be used. Our role is to make sure that the data is available and that we give enough opportunity and training so that people can understand how to use that data. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jenica. Thank you so much to your team. And if there are no further questions, Member Marie, thank you so much for lowering your hand. Thank you so much for your presentation. I don't think that it was distributed to us. If you can distribute a copy of that presentation to our procedural officer, Ms. Kamish Ahmed, if you could please forward it to her, and then we can have it as reference for any further public participation that might come from it. Thank you, Mr. Jenica and your team. You are excused from the meeting and have a great day further.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ahmad has got the presentation, so she can distribute it. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
We move on. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, the committee oversight report, I don't think we've had it signed as yet. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, I actually sent the presentation and the report to all members just to peruse, but the chairperson still has to look at it. But only the members that were there can vouch for what took place, but none of those members are actually present right now except Ms. Botha and Batreko that was on the oversight visit, so we can let the matter stand over.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the draft committee meeting minutes of 12 August 2022. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I was present, and I know Member Brinkhuis and Member Bartman and Member Verlander was present. So are there any additions or subtractions to the minute? We will screw Member Kaiser Philander.
Move to adopt, Chair.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Member Bartman.
Seconded.
Thank you so much, and the minute is so accepted. We move on to our next item on the agenda. It's the discussion on the way forward for the Constitution of the Western Cape First Amendment Bill. Now, in the previous meeting, I requested some time for me to peruse the information at hand and to provide a way forward. Firstly, let me also say that I did not say when the other members were present, Members Brinkhuis and Member Murray. I wanted to say thank you for allowing us to have this meeting on the 24th today instead of the 26th, because we have other commitments on the 26th. So thank you firstly for availing yourselves for this meeting today. I want to say just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're talking about Chapter 9, Sections 71 to 77 of the Western Cape Provincial Constitution that we need amended. Now, I've read through the resolutions by the committee, and one of them was to invite Minister Bradal and the National Minister Barbara Creasy, as well as the Director General for the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Ms. Nomfundo Shabalala, to engage us on the amendments and the impact of the Commissioner on the Environment. After perusing all the documentation and the minutes and everything, I would hereby request to propose that we do so. We enact that resolution of the committee, and we ask the Minister Bradal and Minister Creasy to come and address us, as well as Ms. Shabalala to come address us on the viability of an environmental commissioner for the Western Cape. Are there any other comments, Member Bartman and Member Philander?
Thank you, Chair. I support your resolution. I also want to ask whether it be possible for us to consider. I know I'm not sure if it's the Department of Justice or the Department of the Premier. I can't remember which department it would be, but maybe there are some legal experts that could just also come speak to us about which mechanisms are currently in the law for environmental legislation, because obviously the claim is that the current constitutional provision is already catered for in other laws. So if we are afraid then about those particular laws where those are covered, I think that might be of assistance to us as well, if possible. Thank you.
I fully agree with you, Member Bartman. We shall also resolve. Member Kaiser Philander?
Yes, Chairperson, Member Bartman actually rounded it all up, Chairperson. I think that will give us a full indication. I'm covered. Thank you very much, and I do support the suggestion made in terms of the way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Member Kaiser Philander. I saw the thumbs up, Member Murray, so I'm assuming that you agree with that resolution. Anything further, sir?
No, yes, I want to just raise a caution that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. The trend and the mood in the majority party and the other parties are, we want more authority, more say, more powers. But now by taking out of the Constitution Environmental Commissioner, merely because national has all these laws, is we abdicating now. We're saying, give it to them, and we're setting a precedent. I would rather have said, and my party's view is on this, and I'm here in this parliament as one of them, that we should rather have seen how we can improve the Act to give us more authority than what we've got. And then if there is a constitutional dispute, the Constitution make provision that dispute be settled in a certain way between the spheres of government. And that would have been what I would have supported wholeheartedly, that we mustn't be scared of disputes, because we both have authority over environmental affairs. We have concurrent powers. And the Constitution says where there are differences between the parties, they must first try and resolve this before seeking interference by the courts. And I'm just wondering why the parties here present is against that and say, no, we rather hands up than try and take on Big Daddy. So I want to say I accept everything in terms of amendments to the Constitution, except that one, which I will viciously fight in the legislature on this issue if it comes before. I'm just giving notice.
Thank you very much for your notice, Member Murray, and we so noted. Member Bartman, before I answer, Member Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wanted to latched on to Member Marais' question. And I wanted to find out because often if we want, for example, devolved powers on any level, my biggest concern always is money and budgets. So I also would like to find out, can we pose a question to the national department in this regard? I think it'd probably be environmental, that if they devolved some of the powers relating to environmental legislation currently in South Africa, whether they would also commit to giving us the budget for that, because there are some mandates that overlap. And then sometimes when something happens, then it's national says province must do it, or sometimes province is national must do it, or you say the local government must do it, because local government also have mandates in terms of environmental legislation. And I'm not sure if in this regard you would perhaps liaise with the chair of the Environmental Affairs Committee, but I do think that if we would like more devolved powers in terms of environmental affairs, if we can find out whether that commitment to the money which will follow it will also occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bartman. Okay, Member Brinkhuis, I will. Member Brinkhuis?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon to everybody. Chair, a couple of months ago, we spoke about the environmental affairs issue playing out there in the Sunflare area, in the Makassar area, and there is a sewage plant in that area which is undergoing upgrading there, and I think, as far as I understand, the committee came to a resolution that we are going to do an oversight to that area and to that sewage plant in specific. So what I would like to ascertain is that is there any do we have any idea of when the committee will be doing that oversight to that? I know the committee has a lot of other important oversight that is coming in the coming months, but I think we did do a resolution on having oversight to that area. So if you can just maybe enlighten us on that, when that will be taking place. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before I forward Member Marais another bite at the cherry, I'm not sure whether that falls in the committee's mandate, but I will get back on that. I want to echo what Member Bartman has said, because in the resolutions that I've read, there's also a resolution to invite the chairperson of the standing committee on, amongst others, environmental affairs, on the protection of the Western Cape Coastal Management Project, as well as the communication strategy for the implementation of the Commission of Environment, and whether it's feasible. I agree with Member Bartman. We need to have two things and our ducks in a row, and I would like to latch on to what Member Marais said, that we mustn't shoot ourselves in the foot, and that's the most important thing. So we have to exercise due diligence in this matter. So therefore, I would resolve that we get our Parliament's legal unit to investigate and to give us a report on the legalities surrounding the possibility of enacting an environmental commissioner, and what laws would either supersede or precede the establishment of this environmental commissioner. The second thing that I would like to resolve is that we have do we have the budget, for lack of a better word? Do we have is there an appetite to fund this environmental commissioner in the current status? And third, where would exactly this environmental commissioner lay? Member Marais.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that Member Bartman entered the discussion. because she, after all, is the person responsible for finance, and I agree with her. But we must be able to challenge government in terms of the Constitution, not in terms of what we find preferable. Now, if you look at Constitution Clause 99, it says a cabinet member may assign any power or function that is to be exercised or performed in terms of an act of parliament to a member of a provincial executive or to a municipal council, but this must be in terms of an agreement between the relevant cabinet member and the executive council member or municipal council. So, of course, in this agreement, Finance, Honourable Bartman, it will be part of that agreement, and the Constitution make provision for it, that such an assignment, if they give us the full authority, must be in terms of an agreement between the relevant cabinet member and the executive council member or the municipal council. And of course, in that agreement will be the finances, but we must start the process of that negotiation. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Marine. That is exactly why we're going to invite the National Minister of Environmental Affairs, Minister Creasy, as well as Minister Anton Bredel of the Local Government Ministry to come and address us and to come and investigate this matter further. Member Brinkhuis.
Thank you very much, Chair, but I think that is an old end of mine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So therefore, I do believe that we have the resolutions tabled on this in the minute, and I will request that Ms. Kamish Ahmad would note them down for us. I don't see anybody outside of the committee that is part of the meeting right now, but I am aware that the meeting is being recorded. So for purposes of process, I'd like to thank everybody else who's joined the meeting, and everybody else is excused. Members, we now come to our resolutions and actions. Are there any other resolutions that need to be adopted for further action? I don't see anybody willing to have any further resolutions. Ms. Kamish Ahmad, is there anything else from your side that we need to be aware of?
No, Chairperson, everything is covered. Thank you. We will just let the report stand over to the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
I just want to ask a question.
Yes.
The discussion which Ms. Honourable Bartman and myself had now about whether to amend the Constitution to get rid of our authority over an environmental, shall I say, executive, or whether we are going to rather ask for more authority. Is any of that in this new resolution? Or is it only no, we support that the environmental commissioner be removed out of the Constitution? Or is it that more that we must engage with National to come to an agreement with us that will include the authority and the finances to have our own environmental commissioner? Which of the two are we now resolving on, Honourable Bartman?
Member Bartman?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify my first request for resolution related to getting some advice legally on which legislation in terms of the environment already covers powers which our current provincial constitution is holds that in terms of the environmental commissioner. So essentially what I want to know is, are they overlapping? if they are not overlapping, where do we find those laws when you prosecute, for example, someone in terms of environmental laws? For example, I know that we have the green scorpions, and they are very effective, and that's even without an environmental commissioner, for example. So I just want to know is where's the overlap essentially? Where are these powers already catered for, if any? That was the first one. The second part is I wanted to know in terms of environmental affairs mandate in general. So obviously the schedule in the Constitution. In terms of the schedule where we have overlapping mandates in authority, in terms of whether the national government is willing to devolve some of those authorities, and if so, whether they would commit for the money and the budget for those authorities they'd be or mandates they're willing to devolve. And that's where I asked, I think, I'm not sure if it would fall with us or whether it would, you may need to consult the Chair of Environmental Affairs, but I'll take your guidance on that, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Bartman. To answer Member Marais, we can only support as far as I understand the process, we can only support the amendment of the Constitution through a motion of desirability, any which way. And I don't think we're there yet. I think the most important thing is that we, like you said earlier, we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. And I just want to echo Member Bartman's sentiments that we explore all necessary avenues for now. So we explore the legal overlaps, we explore the devolution of powers, and once we have all those legal opinion and the opinion of the minister, the national minister, and the ministry, then we move forward. Are there any other resolutions or actions to be taken?
No, sir. I fully agree with Honourable Member Bartman. I think it's a very sound proposal which the committee must support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member for London, Member Marais. Thank you very much for your kind assistance in running this meeting and in the cordial way we've run this meeting. Our next meeting will be on the 9th of September, and further details for that meeting will be disseminated according to normal best practice. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, my friend.
Goedemiddag, meneer Marais. Gaat het? Lekker dag verder.
Bye, Khalil.
Bye-bye, meneer Marais.